Cabela Survival Shadow of Katmai is a 2011 hunting game, but with a somewhat like Uncharted/Tomb Raider-esque story mode. It's pretty entertaining overall, although it is flawed in many ways. One thing that we will be doing today is largely looking at the Wii version of this game. I will say the Wii version runs pretty rough. I also played this on PS3. It runs quite a bit better there. Not perfect, but it runs better there, you know. But if you're jumping into a Cabela survival game, I don't really think you have the expectation that you're going to get some AAA polish. But, you know, typically in these scenarios, when you play the Wii version of a game, you have the benefit of, if you prefer like pointer controls for aiming and shooting, then the Wii version gives you that option with the Wii remote and nunchuck. But in the case of Cabela Survival, every version of this game plays very similarly, actually. So this game was bundled with a accessory called the Top Shot Elite, which is a Cabela specific, I guess you could call light gun for the system. It's different technology than a typical light gun. It actually works more like an actual Wii remote, where you have a sensor bar that sits under the screen itself, and then once you calibrate it, essentially it'll go ahead and let you move a cursor on the screen by aiming the front of the gun. And while it doesn't like line up one-to-one, there's actually a scope on the gun that doesn't really do anything, because the way that the cursor works is it doesn't sync properly with the crosshair on that scope on the gun. You know, you essentially use it in a very Wii remote-like fashion, where you basically get context for where the cursor is, and then you kind of learn how to move the gun around from there to kind of point and aim at enemies. Now, as novel as the gun is, and I would definitely recommend playing it with the gun just because it's like a stupid fun thing, it is kind of uncomfortable to use at times. The button placement's just kind of weird on it, and because it's like this like long vertical thing you're holding in your hands, it doesn't feel particularly natural to interact with all the buttons and like, you know, use your hand up front to like use a second analog stick and D-pad and all that stuff. It just doesn't feel good to use per se. However, if you do want to just play this game using the Wiimote and nunchuck, that's what I did here on the Wii version, and it plays perfectly fine that way. So what this game is, you know, all the controller stuff aside, what this game is a third-person action game with a lot of running around in like a snowy mountain range and a lot of platforming, although it's kind of quote-unquote platforming. This is very much from that era of you're gonna go jump on various cliff sides, jump between cliffs and all that stuff, but what's the challenge of actually doing it is a good question, because most of the time the game is very dead set on making sure that you grab onto whatever. It will magnetize you to ledges and make sure you jump superhuman lengths to reach a ledge without you falling. That's not to say you can't fall, but it's just rarely a real concern when you're playing this game. So it's all about kind of just like navigating this environment, jumping on a variety of cliff sides, but you know, it's very linear in that implementation. You don't really have any choice at all, and the camera in this game, because you're using that gun controller, is pretty heavily locked, pushing you forward. So it's not like a full 3D action game. It very much feels kind of like an on-rails game that you are moving yourself through. Now, in that same fashion, when you encounter enemies in this game, it's very much in kind of like an arena format. You'll walk into a room or a section of the mountain, and then all of a sudden a bunch of like wolves or mountain lions will jump out of the trees across from you, and you basically got to sit there and shoot them using the gun. You do have like a focus attack as well that can basically act as like bullet time, and for the most part when you shoot enemies it takes about like 1 to 2 hits to kill them, but if you shoot them in the heart, that seems to kill them immediately. There's also these like really dumb kind of encounters where when you're climbing you can get attacked by birds and bats, and then you like pull out your pistol and have to shoot them, but you usually can just climb right past them and they'll ignore you if you really want to. But this game does have a scoring system, so if you do want to maximize your score, you do want to kill as many enemies as possible, and I believe also shooting them a heart may also increase your score. Now, one thing you might not expect to be in this game is that there are boss battles. They're almost entirely against bears, and every one of these encounters are basically the same, but they do have significantly more health than most other things in the game. So this really does require you to move a bit, and it does feel a bit sticky. Like the main character never really feels like a nimble character to move around. You have like a dodge roll, but you really got to lead those dodges to actually dodge enemy attacks. And you do have like a variety of guns you can use to fight the enemy, but they're all kind of like single shot kind of rifle things. So honestly, they all feel very similarly to me. I assume they have different damage values and stuff, but pretty much any gun will get you through any scenario. From a gameplay perspective though, this is kind of it. It's very simple, it's very repetitive, but I do think it's like a fun thing to use. And you know, I'm personally a big fan of like pointer controls with shooters, so I always have fun with that kind of mechanic in these kind of games. It's also very short short, so it doesn't overstay its welcome. It's about like a 2-ish to 3-ish hour long game, and they sprinkle in some gimmicks here and there with some sledding, some grapple hook mechanics, things like that. None of it feels particularly good or great, but it gets the point across and getting you through this game, and I think that's what's like the fun part about it. I think another part of this game that actually enhances it quite a bit is the story itself, which is kind of a weird thing to say with the Cabela's game, although apparently this is something that happens in other Cabela titles as well, although I have not played them. And that is, you follow the plot of like this pilot who has crash landed in the mountainside along with this doctor, and basically they have to A, survive, and then B, get down to this village within 48 hours essentially, or else something very bad will happen. I will say, I will leave the spoilers out of here so you can be surprised by the twists in the plot, but you know, they have to rush down this mountain really quick once they kind of figure out what's going on. And you know, it's a pretty bland story overall. It's nothing really that special. It's pretty much just, you know, mountain man being like, yeah, I'm gonna shoot a bunch of wolves. Okay, now I gotta go hunt a moose so he can like warm up and all that stuff. And you get like these little journal entries you can read about these guys who are in the mountains like fighting over money and stuff like that. It's nothing special, but it just is like fun overall. Like the delivery of the dialogue's really good, and there's a lot of like goofy moments throughout the game that don't take itself too seriously, and I really like that aspect of it. It feels like you're playing through like a dumb B movie, not only in terms of its story, its characters, but also like its length, and in some ways like implementation. Like I said with the gameplay itself, nothing here really stands out, but it's the kind of fun part of this is that you're playing it using a gun kind of thing. Although, like I said earlier, I do think it's worth playing through with like a Wii remote and nunchuck if you're cool with that too. Definitely the more comfortable way to play it, although the Wii version, as you've seen on screen here, runs pretty rough. But it's just kind of your stereotypical cast. Really, it just feels like a dumb, fun romp through a game that maybe is not like super important or super special, but I think that's like what's fun about it, is it is just like this stupid thing you play through, and it's just fun for that period of time, and then there's nothing else you have to really think about. It's very simple, very straightforward. Anyways, that's it. Thanks so much for coming. OneControlPort.com is the website. I did go ahead and stream the PS3 version of this game, so if you don't want to actually play the game, you can watch me play the game that way using the gun. And then I also, if you're more into like that Wii shooter kind of thing, I have a variety of Wii shooters that I've reviewed in the last year or so. I'll link a couple of them up screen here at the end if you want to check that out.